and welcome to another episode of United World College Mostar Podcast. And today's episode we have quite a special guest, our teacher Alex. So Alex, could you introduce yourself and tell us more about what you teach in this school and how did you and UWC Mostar came together?
Okay, well hi Tara. My name's Alex Tweedley. From the UK originally, though I live here in Mostar on a permanent basis. I'm a teacher of English A, English Literature, and also Lit. And I've been working at the college. This is my fourth year full-time, and I also worked here part-time in 2016 to 17. I originally, it's quite interesting how I originally started at the college because I've been here twice, as it were. Initially, a client of mine at the English language school that I was running at the time actually told me about the part-time job vacancy. And so I gave them a call, and the whole process was very informal actually. They were a teacher short for one of their blocks, one of their classes. It was just an SL block, and I had a very short interview and then started a couple of days later. And actually then built up to doing that year, another teacher left, and so I added a few more HR blocks and completed a part-time year. And I then went back to the business that I had founded actually and started, which was an English language school here in Mostar, because really that needed my attention. And I'm not sure you can do UWC part-time very well.
I wouldn't say so.
And then was back at my other workplace, but still retained very fond memories of my time here. It was really amazing. And then a full-time position came up, and UWC actually gave me a call. The previous deputy head remembered my experience here, and when the full-time position came up, they called and asked if I would interview, which I did. Much more sort of formal interview here for a permanent role. And I was ready then to jump in to UWC in full, shall we say.
Yeah. Great. So you've mentioned an English school that you taught in before. So could you tell us more about that and how did you switch? Where do you see the differences between two of those, and how was that switch?
In 2015 I actually started my own English language school here in Mostar, the English Institute. So I was the founder and the lead teacher, the director, everything all in one actually, and sort of built it from scratch. And that's very much English as a foreign language teaching, so it's grammar, it's certain written forms like say blog or article or essay and things like this, but more of a second language. And it was great, a lovely experience, but for me my passion's always been literature, so for me it was the job to change to come here was a chance to really embrace that calling to teach literature again. And was your question also relating to the difference in...
Between the two schools. Did you teach before the English school you founded in any school?
Yes, I've just completed now my 20th year of teaching, so I've also taught in public schools in the UK, in private schools, in an international school, even a primary school for a while. And UWC is very different from all of those, I would say. It's got its own ethos, it's got its own set of values. It's community-minded, it's internationally minded. That's the key difference, I think. Students are from around the world. It's also selective, of course. So you get to work with, like yourself, the best and brightest, which is a teacher's dream. It's lovely. But also you get a whole spectrum of different nationalities and therefore interests and experience. It makes your classroom very diverse.
Yeah. So would you say that is kind of the biggest difference between teaching in the private schools and other international schools and UWC as an international school?
Yeah, I think so. And I think because it's boarding, because it's residential, and people are staying here, there is this community aspect that you don't always get if you have a lot of day students just coming in and out and going home to parents. But here it's an all-round experience, and it's an all-round experience for teachers as well. There's a lot of things going on, outside of classes that maybe you don't or get the chance to be involved in. So there is a community feel both in the classroom and outside the classroom.
Yeah, and it's the fact that we see each other a lot outside of the classroom as well, and not just the inside, which is something that a lot of international schools do not usually have, like you said.
Yeah.
So I also think that's kind of something that really sets UWC apart.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And one more thing that sets UWC apart, that I think we all agree, is the IB program or the IB curriculum. And could you tell us what you think about the IB as a part of UWC curriculum and how it shapes UWC?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a language teacher, so I work with metaphors, and my favourite metaphor for the IB is that it's the Rolls Royce of curriculum. So by that I mean sort of the best and maybe the most exclusive. For me, I think it's genuinely the best program I've taught.
Yeah.
One of the reasons for coming here is not just UWC, it's the IB. It's a program which stretches and challenges students in the best way. It's very open-ended, which means that high achieving students, of which UWC has a large number of these, because of course we're selective here, the open-ended nature of it really gives students a chance to kind of thrive, think differently, be creative. That also of course makes it very challenging. And I think sometimes the more open-ended or ambiguous nature of some of the maybe assessment models or the tasks or demands can make people feel a little insecure. So part of the job is giving structure to that and interpreting what the IB want. But I do think it works within the UWC context, because the IB try to be internationally minded as well.
Yeah.
For example, in my subject, we teach text and translation from around the world, from currently The Stranger in Northern Africa, or Ibsen from Norway.
Yeah.
I also teach text from Japan, or as well as sort of Eurocentric or American texts as well. So I think there is a fit there that works.
Yeah, kind of the clash of values, I would say, but in a positive way. Where they merge in the sense of one international side and this international side, making it quite pleasant for students from everywhere, basically.
Yeah, I hope that students can find at least one text out of the text that I teach that they can kind of identify with and maybe find themselves in.
Yeah, because especially here when students are far away from their homes, it's so incredible or even easy to relate to something, or to feel surprised when you see something that's coming from your part of the world, and then you feel included and you feel engaged into the program, which really does help you to accommodate into the community and merge into the community so much better.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you mentioned in a lot of cases that you're the one who kind of brings students up in the times of insecurity of the subject, and when they simply struggle. So how do you work with people from all over the world with different academical backgrounds?
Yeah, I mean, this is a huge challenge. We have a word for it in the teaching curriculum, which is differentiation, which means that you hopefully adapt your lessons to take into account the different areas of knowledge that people have. So for example, for my subject, this applies to skills of analytical writing.
Yeah.
For some people in more traditional curriculums, they may have not been asked to analyse. They've been working in the realms of kind of describing or memorization or sort of factual-based accumulation of knowledge. And all of a sudden, these skills of analysis or synthesis are new. And this could come as a great shock.
Yeah.
Whereas for other people, especially if they've been in a UWC background or had an IB background, they've been having an inquiry, analytical-based mindset, maybe their whole schooling, or at least for their secondary education. And it is difficult. It is difficult. As a teacher, there's certain things that I try to do, things like providing frameworks. So what does an example analytical paragraph look like? We look at sample answers in class, we analyse those in detail to try to find elements of structure that we can then apply. Sometimes it's a case of individual meetings. I have quite a few one-on-one meetings with students who they require extra support or want to push themselves further and improve their skills of writing, sometimes to improve grade or work on a particular paper, and then I will work individually with people. In some senses in the classroom as well, there's a sense of trying to scaffold learning. You know, we build up to more complex ideas or pieces of writing. So yes, it's a challenge, and I think each teacher approaches it differently within their own subject disciplines, but it's something that we all try to do to differentiate in some way to meet the diverse needs that we see.
But it's genuinely very nice to see that there is a supporting system, especially when students come, like you said, very insecure and even let down when they have the exam that requires them the analysis they did never encounter before in their lives.
Yeah.
It's good to know that there's someone to kind of back them up and to push them a bit further and to help them and to reach out and really helps them to kind of go through the IB as good as possible.
I think so, and I think it's also dependent on the individual student and their motivation levels, because some people come and they are really determined to improve. They're really, they really seek to overcome those challenges, and I think people who come with those mindsets, whatever background they come from, they're going to find that they can improve in this environment. And it's maintaining that mindset that I can change, I can improve, that's really key, and then we can work with people wherever they're at.
Yeah. So we mentioned several times that UWC experience and the teaching experience in UWC is much more than just happening much more than in the classroom, and that we interact a lot with one another outside. So because UWC lasts for only 2 years, how do you get a chance to meet all the students and to kind of introduce yourself to them and to make a connection with them, which is incredibly important in this school?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have to say I don't always meet them all. There are some students I don't sort of meet in full in my time here. But in addition to obviously getting to know people really well in class, because I see students 4 times a week, so we really do, I think, form that bond as you walk through the course together. There's many opportunities actually. There's sometimes weekend activities, the outdoors program. I've been hiking and get to know people through that, the ski trips that we go on, especially the residential ones where you stay over, you really get a chance to meet people that way. Project Week that we had recently, where we are 3, 4, 5 days with students outside of our subject disciplines, doing a project together. This year it was an art project that I was involved in, doing a mural in the local school. Previously I've done Renew and Renovate, so renovating people's homes with enthusiastic students, working with people below the poverty line. All of those type of activities really get a chance to bond and also hopefully to do something useful together outside the classroom. And then finally, I think I'd say as a tutor, you get to see people outside of your subject disciplines. I've got a small tutor group of 7 or 8 people who I get to know really well over the course of the year. And this is very nice.
Yeah. So do you think it's incredibly important for these connections to happen at UWC specifically?
I think so. I think not just for students, but also for staff. I think it's fulfilling. In a different way, because you guys are the reason why we are here, and to know you personally, particularly coming from where you're at, and people from around the world is a privilege for us, and I think as well for yourselves. You're a long way from home, and I think to have other role models around you is really nice, and sometimes it's just a question of having a bit of fun together. Like I did a bit of singing in the jam session with my students in one of my English blocks, which was great. Why not? So I think you can also have some fun together outside the classroom. Yeah,
and collectively get out of the comfort zone and to challenge ourselves. And sometimes I think even students and the teachers do not realize how much we actually all follow the UWC values and UWC missions without realizing. And it's great to see that both students and teachers challenge themselves over the course of the 2 years, and especially teachers repetitively 2 years and 2 years of people. So now that you mentioned the jam sessions and the project weeks and even the CAS and the tutor group, so what's your favorite thing about teaching at this school?
Yeah, I'd say that there was maybe 2 or 3 things. I think for me, perhaps the number one thing is the intellectual challenge. Because I'm working with such amazing people that know more than me. You guys know more than me very often, and you're brighter than me, and your minds are fresher than me. And so for me, this is quite stimulating and challenging. And the discussions that come up in class make me question ideas and lead my mind in new directions. And for me, that's really interesting. Which really leads me on to my second area, which is why I'm here. It's you. it's the incredible students. I think nearly every teacher would say that here, that it's the students that they teach that really is the motivating force. It's wonderful, and it's an absolute privilege to work with people of this age, I think, 16 to 19, but also students from around the world. It's enriching, it's vibrant, it's unifying, which is great. So even though live permanently in a city that has one culture, local vocal culture, and I am from the UK, again, UWC almost has its own culture and has this multicultural element. So this is really, really great. And I think the only other thing that I really love here is, I think can probably be summed up in terms of freedom. I see here that the atmosphere is one which is quite freeing, quite liberating, and quite empowering. And it's for students, where the student voice is valued and heard, but it's also the same for staff, where I feel I can have a voice in decisions or in planning my curriculum in the way that I'd like. The IB gives me freedom as well to choose my text that I want to teach. And so it's quite liberating in that sense as a teacher. It's less constraining than other curriculums that I've taught in, which are more rigid.
It's interesting to observe that not only that we're very free and in the open campus, but that we also have the freedom in the curriculum, and the teachers also feel the freedom. And sometimes I really do feel like UWC Mostar is a city within the city of Mostar, basically.
I would agree with you there, and we have this kind of relaxed vibe, if you like, whereby we can meet a student to discuss work over coffee. That happens here. Sometimes we go for coffee as a class towards the end. Sometimes I work in a cafe. And I think if you're kind of motivated as I am to teach and really embrace that freedom, I think you can do some really interesting things within that context that maybe are not so possible in a more traditional school.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And my name is Tara Majkic. Thank you as well for joining us, and see you in another episode.